Hey internets, it's Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, and today on MTD Reviews, we're going to be taking a look at the upcoming Kickstarter, Dungeons and Lasers. Well, I would like to thank the lovely people over at Archon Studio for sending me this demo loot box, which is a preview of their upcoming Dungeons and Lasers Kickstarter. Inside this demo loot box, we are going to see, well, we're going to see what's in there together. Their Kickstarter is coming on August 13th. If you look over there in the lower left-hand corner, you will see their links to their Dungeons and Lasers Facebook page, dungeonsandlasers.com, and at Dungeons and Lasers Official on Instagram. Make sure that you check out their website. You can sign up for their newsletter and be notified when the Kickstarter goes live, as well as anything else. I do want to preface up front that Archon Studio has sent me this loot demo box for my review. It is a paid sponsorship, but as a part of that agreement, I will be providing my true and honest opinion of this product. Without further ado, let's crack this box open and see what's inside. Now, full disclosure, I did pop it open earlier to get rid of some of the packing material, but I did not look too closely at it. We've got some documentation and a whole bunch of sprues. Move the box out of the way here. So, as stated a couple of times now, this is the loot demo box, so this is just a demonstration of what the product actually is. We have in here what appears to be a very clear set of instructions on what is included and how to remove everything from the sprues, and what all of the different sections are. So we'll take a look at this in a moment together. Additionally, there is a preview of some of the various sets and features that will be coming presumably as stretch goals or perhaps as additional offerings when the Kickstarter is fully live. If you look up there in the upper left-hand corner, you will notice that I have grabbed some images from their Facebook showing variations and other renderings of what will be included. One of the things I think is really neat about the theme of Dungeons and Lasers is the idea that they're catering to both the Dungeons and Dragons fantasy tabletop and the sci-fi tabletop. Those of you that watch Mini Terrain Domain know that I've run some games in the Harbinger setting. I recently played in a game of Mothership. I like some sci-fi horror games, so that type of terrain will be really cool. Now, this is also interesting from my perspective. As you all know, I craft my own terrain. One of the reasons I did so is some of the modular dungeon terrain options were a little bit pricey, and I thought, well, I can make exactly what I need. But I find this interesting because this is not custom sculpted cast resin. This is 3D modeled, I'm guessing 3D modeled terrain pieces that are then injection molded like model kits. Now I'm going to move these out of the way because each sprue is the same, and in a few moments we'll actually pull everything apart and assemble it to see what kind of terrain we actually have. But they provided this handy little key here, and we can see, looking at the piece that they have provided us, I'll rotate it around the way they're showing it. We have here a very basic fantasy and sci-fi set half floor. So they've provided us with a dungeon floor on this side and the sci-fi floor on this side to give us a sense of what that's going to look like. We've got the basic fantasy set half wall. We've got the basic sci-fi set half wall. Oh, sorry, this is actually the engine room set. The sci-fi set half wall is on the opposite side of this one. You can see the dungeon wall or doorway is here. There's some cool little runes in there. This has that very, this Xenogenesis is what they're calling it, which is actually very Alien H.R. Geiger-esque. And then dungeon torture chamber set. These are what look like coffins, and you can see little metal rings, the wood beams that enhance it. I get the sense that this stuff is going to paint up really nicely. These are the connector pieces to put everything together. Half dungeon floor, half sci-fi floor, and from what I can tell, every set comes with an animal companion. This is the fantasy version of Geralt the Wolf. It is this wolf that you see here that is carrying a sword in its mouth and has a helmet on, which is a really unique addition to the set. I don't know if they're going to provide any kind of stat blocking or anything for these kind of things, but they're definitely fun little collector's items to put together and display. I know my son has already said that he wants one of the wolves that's included in here. Now, according to this, no glue is needed, only cutting them from the sprues. So we're going to check this out. We're going to see how easily this stuff comes off of the sprues. And then I will do a little fast forward as I cut all of the remaining sprues apart. We'll take a look at what some of these look like assembled. So I've got a nice little pair of side cutters here that I would typically use for this kind of thing. The nice thing is I grew up exposed to model building because of my dad, who had been building models since he was 17 years old. And he tried to get me into it. I tried building a lot of model kits, never quite took to fine scale modeling. So the plastic is actually, with the side cutters, is cutting pretty easily. I've got the flush flat side against the piece itself, so we don't end up doing anything weird cutting into it. I will say these base pieces, in terms of the way it's connected to the molding, are really solid. I'm a little concerned I can't get my cutter in there. So I think, well, that's exactly what I was going to do, is cut the sprue away. These definitely have as I'm cutting them away, I can tell these have a really solid feel to them. Like, this is not cheap plastic. I'm going to try to get the side cutter in here. And so this is definitely something, obviously, you wouldn't be assembling these real quick as you were preparing to run a game. This is something the dungeon master or person in charge of the crafts would take care of well in advance, because of course you're going to want to paint this stuff up before you bring it to your table. So I'm actually not concerned about the fact that it's taking me a little bit to pop these apart. In some cases, if you're a crafter, which may be one of the reasons why you're here, you might find that the sprues are of interest in keeping, because, well, we like to use everything. All right, this is one of the pieces completely cut off, one of the wall pieces, and that is got a good thickness to it. That looks like it's almost a 1/4 inch thick, and it's got a nice solid feel to it, really durable. You would almost think that they would make this hollow, and it's not. I think there's some hollow bits here, but overall that is just good and sturdy. Now, one thing you're going to notice is these, I'll move it there so you can see the reflection through there, or the pass through, these holes. Looking at some of the art up in here, you may actually see some of the renderings with lights. I've seen one with torches. I'm not sure how much of that is just CG rendering and how much of that is if they're intending to include small LED lights that will fit inside there. But I'm really impressed with how easily this stuff comes off the sprues. I did set aside one of these. As a modeler, one of the things I would do is sand all of the sprue areas down before painting. And that feels like it's actually sanding really easily. I don't know enough about plastics and stuff to be able to tell you what kind of plastic this is, but yeah, that I could see getting a set prepped for paint in under an hour and having a lot of fun painting this. This is probably going to make the sides go together a lot easier too. So let's go ahead and let's take a look at this Geralt the Wolf and see just how easily Geralt goes together. All right, the pegs need a little bit of work, and this is a 1-inch grid, so yeah, there's Geralt the Wolf. Not quite on the screw there, but pretty decent little mini. A little bit of work, fill in those seams, trim it up, it'll look wonderful. All right, we're gonna do a little bit of fast motion here and get the rest of these off the sprue and see what the dungeons look like. All right, after approximately 34 minutes, here's all the pieces cut out. Now, given the amount of stuff that's here and making an assumption that this could be a standard basic set size, 34 minutes to get everything ready to paint is not that long. Then once you get everything painted, get it all together, considering what it would take to build something like this the way I do by crafting, it would take me a lot longer to come up with something like this. And as I said earlier, these are all, at no point during the break apart stage did any of these seem like they were weak. These are the floor pieces that are the thinnest, and they're still really sturdy. Nothing felt like it was in danger of cracking during the de-spruing. Everything came apart relatively easy with a good set of side cutters, good sharp knife. I think you're going to be able to do this no problem, even if you're new to plastic modeling. I spent about 20 minutes or so filing down some of the edges, figuring out how I wanted to assemble the pieces. I decided I wanted to try a larger room and have a hallway coming off of it. I was able to do that. I had a few pieces left over for some floor pieces, though without the wall pieces they won't really sit up here very well. They tend to want to drop in. But with wall pieces on, you end up with an extra layer that you absolutely can place on top. They sit nice and level on there. You can, with the proper support, set them wherever you need to. In some of the photos up here in the corner, you may actually see some of the accessories that they're going to be adding to this, which include snap-on ladders, clip-on ladders that you could have in there for getting to multiple levels. I think that everything went together really well. I had a bit of struggle getting some of the pieces together only because I didn't properly file all the edges down and clean everything down. If I were going to, or when I decide to completely build this out, I'll take the necessary time to file everything down, clean up the edges, make sure everything sits together nicely. That's where some of this flex is coming from, and these pieces aren't quite sitting flush. That's on me. That's not on the overall kit, from what I can tell. I would like to see a bit more in the way of wall connectors. These do have a little bit of play in them where these different sections are coming together. Maybe it's not going to be an issue at the table, but you can definitely see some spacers here at the corners where pieces are not put together, or rather are not connected. There's not a true grid in here, though the grid is sort of implied when you look at the spacing of where the wood is here or in the Xenogenesis flooring. So I grabbed some minis here just to see, get a sense of scale. This is a large, that's a ogre. Here's a medium humanoid sitting in there, a couple more of these. So you start to get, if you have a full party in here, it can get a little crowded, but that's true of any terrain. The larger minis are not going to sit down inside these hallways very well, but then maybe that's true of the giant ogre, as it were. But you can definitely stick them in here. You're not, with the 1-inch grid, you're not going to be able to go two abreast like you would in some other terrain. But again, maybe not an issue. Other accessories sit in there nicely. I think these would be a fantastic addition to any Game Masters and Players table. So, in summary, looking at the Dungeons and Lasers demo loot box and what was supplied, let's look at some of the pros. I think that the pieces are incredibly sturdy, nice solid plastic. Even the thin floor pieces feel nice and sturdy, like they're not going to snap if I put a little too much force on them. These connector pieces are easily 1/8 of an inch thick, 2-part injection molding from the looks of it, and there's no flex to these things, nice and sturdy. And this would be a concern if they weren't as thick as they are, because in some cases you're trying to put multiple pieces together, you're putting a bit of force on them. Honestly, I think these floor pieces would snap before the connectors do. From what I can tell, again, the flex is coming from needing to clean in between, clean those sprue marks off, because the individual pieces seem to be nice and flat. The walls snap on into the grooves and have a piece to go around where the otherwise connectors would be. And once they're snapped in place, they feel nice and sturdy. They don't feel like they're going to slide out. Cons. I'm going to be really honest here. The major con that I see here is going to be the paint. I think once you get these things painted up and start putting them together, taking them apart, you're going to have to be aware that if you're taking them apart, putting them together, taking it apart, putting it together, you might rub the paint off. So a really good primer, a really good coats of paint, and a really good sealer are going to be very important regardless of what kind of paints you use on these. The other con may be that the walls of these, which are 2 inches high, for some people that create some visibility issues on the table, particularly with these narrow channels, but again, true of any terrain in this style. Overall, Dungeons and Lasers, I think they got a solid product here. Arkan Studio has had several successful Kickstarters so far. I think this is going to be another one. You can check Arkan Studio's Dungeons and Lasers out on Facebook here. Check out dungeonsandlasers.com to sign up for their newsletter to be notified when the Kickstarter goes live, as well as be notified of any other updates. And you can find them on Instagram at Dungeons and Lasers Official. Follow them on Kickstarter. Check them out when they hit on August 13th. This is going to be a product to watch. It's got the MTD endorsement. Hey internets, it's Jake, and I want to thank you for watching today's Mini Terrain Domain video. If you're on Facebook, you can follow Mini Terrain Domain at facebook.com/Mini Terrain Domain. If you're on Twitter, you can follow at MTD_Jake to stay up to date on everything that I've got going on. If you've been watching the video on YouTube, I'd encourage you to subscribe at youtube.com/Mini Terrain Domain, and don't forget to hit the bell to be notified when videos go live. If you like streaming D&D games, you can check us out on twitch.tv/mini-terrain-domain. And if you would like to support the channel, you can do so at patreon.com/mini-terrain-domain. It's because of the support of viewers like you that I am able to bring you videos like this. Thank you again for watching. I'm Jake, and this has been Mini-Terrain Domain. Imagine, build, play. MTD.